What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to the channel and a happy new year to you all, folks. But now that we're in 2022, we all know by now that the Mets have a lot more crucial decisions and moves to be had prior to the upcoming season. So in today's video, we'll be breaking down the top 5 post-lockout priorities for the New York Mets. So as always, folks, make sure you stay all the way till the end of the video for all the details and all my thoughts on these priorities, what they mean for the New York Mets, and what's the likelihood or unlikelihood of them actually transpiring, and so much more. And of course, folks, if you find yourself enjoying this kind of Mets content and you want to see more great Mets content like this, don't hesitate from smashing that like and subscribe button, sharing this video with your friends, on the notification bell, all those great things. Thank you all so much for the continued support, folks. Now let's jump right into today's video. Starting off at number 5, the Mets absolutely need to determine, and rather quickly, if they're trying to evaluate the trade market before the season begins, on who stays and who leaves. Because we all know there's a handful of players that finished their 2021 campaign having a down year, not just from performance, but injuries alike, but also are guys that are left without positions on this roster and don't even really have a great fit off the bench besides potentially DH because they lack versatility. And yes, Jeff McNeil is unbelievably versatile as the Mets starting second baseman as of now, but there's a lot of trade rumors that we discussed in previous live streams and videos that he may very well be dealt because the Mets know he is the asset among all these uncertainties that has the most trade value. So he's a big wild card. What are you going to do with him? If you do part with him, how do you replace him in that infield? Same thing goes with guys like JD Davis, Dom Smith, Robinson Cano, all guys that lack versatility, all profile really as a DH at this point, and are all guys that you probably don't want off your bench too much. Maybe you can make exception for some of them, but JD Davis felt heading into the offseason that he probably wasn't coming back. He said it himself. Dom Smith has been a big wild card because he's just a first baseman. He's not a left fielder. We know that by now. And of course, Pete Alonso has first base locked down long term. And Robinson Cano, what are you going to get from him for a guy in his late 30s and now a couple years left on that horrendous contract that didn't play this past year because of not his first but second PED suspension? The Mets aren't going to bank on all these uncertainties. They want certainties, and they're going to probably part with at least half these guys, if I had to guess right now, to really address this roster in various other areas and bring more versatility. So it's going to be key what they do here, but we all need to know sooner than later, what are they going to do with determining these players and their futures? Now coming in at priority number 4, it's bolstering the bullpen. And as we discussed in a previous video on the channel, links in the description as always, folks, if you haven't seen it already, on 5 bullpen targets for the Mets. There are a lot of relievers out there that make so much sense for the team in Queens, especially after losing not just your best reliever in 2021 in Aaron Loop, but knowing that Loop was also pretty much your lone southpaw out of that bullpen. And the Mets have a lot of key arms in that bullpen as it is, but they need to upgrade. They need to add, really, I would say ideally, 2 more bona fide guys that can come in and get the job done to help the Mets down the stretch and hopefully have a deep playoff run and beyond in 2022 and further. So you look at some free agent names, there's plenty out there, but no one really profiles better in my mind than the southpaw who split time with Chicago and the Oakland A's, that being Andrew Chafin, someone that I really feel could come in and fit the job just fine. And you also have some plenty of other options out there too if you want to look for righties, as I've discussed previously. Colin McHugh, a former New York Met, and himself. You also have other guys like Ryan Tepera. The list goes on and on. So the Mets are going to get creative, I'm sure, come the bullpen market, but they absolutely need to make sure that they add a couple more arms at least to really round things out, bolster that bullpen, if you will, and get them on the right path to success in 2022. Here at priority number 3, it's figuring out the third base position. It feels like a broken record, but the Mets still don't have set in stone what their third baseman is going to be in 2022, even after this past year being connected to the same free agent and trade targets since we started WardyNYM. It feels like third base is still having that uncertainty because yes, they did sign that short-term fit in Eduardo Escobar this offseason, and the Mets want to go down that route short-term wise. They surely can, but there was a lot of reasons to believe leading up to the lockout that the Mets are, 1, not done in adding offensive players, but 2, looking for bats in that infield, which tells you that if they do say part with someone like Jeff McNeil via trade of significance, then you can put someone like Eduardo Escobar at second base, and then you have that hole at third to either address a short or long term. And if you're looking for someone that has versatility, which is what the Mets have been doing all offseason, there's no one that checks off the boxes more than the man who feels inevitable, that being Chris Bryant, because KB, of course, that we discussed in a previous video, links in the description as always, folks, if you haven't seen it already, but KB is someone that the Mets have been going after for easily over a year now. Last offseason, they tried hard, couldn't get get a trade done with the Cubs. This offseason, they were pushing for him leading up to the lockout, and they're going to prioritize him again 100% once the lockout is lifted. The really only X factor I could see in him not coming to the Mets is that he signs a longer-term deal, because the Mets did not go to the 6-year deal that was offered by the Detroit Tigers for Javi Baez. That's why that relationship fell apart, among other things. So unless there's something else there that's truly significant that separates KB from Baez besides the versatility, that could be the X factor and why it doesn't happen. But we can fully expect them to explore it again, prioritize it, because KB can come in at third base, can help you in a win now stage, which is what the Mets are, and is also someone that can go in the corner outfield, be as versatile as you can for someone that played 5 to 6 positions in 2021. Billy Epler loves that. The Mets love versatility, and KB checks off those boxes wholeheartedly, especially if they could land him on maybe a 3-4 year deal, short-term, high AAV. If they're going down that route for a Scott Boras client like they did with Max Scherzer, then surely they could probably get something done or close to with Chris Bryant as well. And then you get on to another fit, someone like Matt Chapman, who, if you checked out my previous video on potential blockbuster trades, links in the description as always, folks, too. Jeff McNeil, if he's going to be traded for a starting pitcher, no one profiles that much better than the Oakland A's via trade. And they also have a third baseman that the Mets have liked over this past year, that being Matt Chapman, best third baseman in the league defensively, at least, can come in as your third base fit, at least on the short term, until Brett Beatty's ready. Then you can either be done with him because he has 2 years left on his contract, or go down a different route, but you can get creative there. So the Mets have plenty of options third base wise. They can either stay in house or explore other options, but rest assured they need to get it figured out, and they absolutely will get it figured out, set in stone, prior to the 2022 season. You're at priority number 2, and this goes directly in hand with the last priority, that being in adding another big bat. A bat of significance, right? Because yes, Mets were terrible in 2021 in so many ways, especially their offense. It was piss poor. And yes, they did a great job so far this offseason in adding bats that are going to help right away. And Eduardo Escobar, Mark Canha, and Starling Marte headlining them all. But the Mets still want to do more. And if they're going to add a big bat, I do expect it to probably be at the third base position from everything that we've seen at this point. But it's also a situation where maybe that isn't the case. Maybe they do stay with Eduardo Escobar at third. Maybe they still do trade someone like Jeff McNeil, and you have that hole at second base. Well, then you could go in your free agent routes at second base, and there's no bigger bat that could really profile as a second baseman better than Trevor Story on a shorter term, high AAV deal. I don't see this as a likelihood. I feel like just for one reason or another, it doesn't feel as good of a fit as others, especially with Trevor Story probably wanting a long-term deal and probably wanting to stay out west, especially if he can go with the Astros if Carlos Correa goes elsewhere, because he's from the area. It just makes perfect sense. But outside that, the Mets can go other routes, and if they do stay part with one or both of JD Davis, Dom Smith, then you have your DH options are limiting. And Robinson Cano, if you don't want to deal with him in a scenario, hopefully right where the Mets might bury that contract, they can eat it. Steve Cohen, richest owner in baseball, if he wants to do it, he can. The Mets could go after a Nelson Cruz, a 1-year deal, right, for Boomstick. Even though he's in his 40s, he's still getting the job done like no tomorrow. It would be great as a DH for the Mets, as we discussed in a previous video. Links in the description as always, folks. Or if you want to go down maybe a mid-level deal with someone who killed the Mets in 2021 via DH, a Kyle Schwarber, who hit 10 home runs against the Mets during his time with not just the Nationals, but the Red Sox. I don't think that's a likelihood, just because I don't think the Mets are going to prioritize DH on a multi-year deal for someone. But regardless, the Mets still want to add more offense to this team. We're going to see how exactly they do it, but rest assured they're going to figure it out one way or another prior to the upcoming season. And last but not least, priority number 1, the most important of all, and I think most Mets fans can agree, is adding another frontline starter. An emphasis on the front line, a top starter, because the Mets made it clear, as we discussed in a previous video, links in the description as always, folks, and plenty of other live streams. You guys have all seen them by now. The Mets are not just looking to add another starter of depth in this rotation. It's been made abundantly clear that they are looking to add a number 3 that could even be potentially a number 2 or a number 1, a ace on opposing clubs. That's what they tried doing pre-lockout, because after Steven Matz, they lost out on him, as we know. They then pivoted Kevin Gausman. That's a big jump, and they were trying to get both Kevin Gausman and Max Scherzer, which tells you that they are still all in, looking for another bona fide starter. And for these rumors now to come out with Jeff McNeil to say add a starter, they're trying to add someone of significance. We talked about plenty, and we will continue to, but some names that definitely come to mind that we discussed in our Blockbusters video as well, it's the Oakland A's, and it's all of them, whether that be someone like a Sean Manaea, the southpaw, Kershaw, who just makes so much sense given his contract. He's a rental and someone that could come in and really be that perfect fit for not just a lefty, but a perfect balance in the middle of your rotation. You could go for his buddy and Chris Bassett as well. Bassett, who has some really nasty off-speed stuff that can come in and be a really strong number 3 for the Mets. If you maybe want to go more and you have a Frankie Montas option, maybe you want to go even beyond that and go for the biggest fish out there potentially, you could go for a name like Luis Castillo if you're really going all in and trying to make the best rotation in 2022 via trade. Or if you want to go for agency, you have those names, including some guys that the Mets have shown interest in already pre-lockout, including someone like Carlos Rodon, who had a dominant 2021 campaign, but his biggest factor into why the Mets may not go down that route is not just potentially a longer term deal that you might be looking for, but also his health uncertainties. He had some ups and downs with his forearm, I believe, throughout the 2021 season. And then you also have a veteran that I do believe would be unbelievably hard to pry away from the West Coast. But if you can, if there's one team that can do it, it is surely the New York Mets on an unbelievably high AAV short-term deal, and that is someone like Clayton Kershaw. Again, not someone that I necessarily view as a likelihood, as I do with the Mets just exploring all their options as they did so well prior to the lockout. They landed Mad Max Scherzer, but they're not done yet. They want another bona fide starter, a frontline starter to be their number 3, and there are plenty of great options out there, either via trade or free agency. Rest assured, we all can fully expect the Mets to get that done and fully prioritized up leading into the 2022 season. But that wraps things up for this video, folks. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please make sure to let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. Which priority of these 5 is most important to you personally as a fan that you absolutely want to see get addressed one way or the other heading into the season? And of course, folks, if you found yourself enjoying this kind of Mets content and you want to see more great Mets content like this, don't hesitate for smashing that like and subscribe button, sharing this video with your friends, on the notification bell, all those great things. So much great Mets content is coming out throughout the week, folks. We got live streams and other individual videos and beyond, so stay tuned for them. Thank you all so much for the continued support. It always does mean the world to me, and let's get ready for what's going to be action-packed 2022, not just on the channel, but for our beloved New York Mets. Thank you again, folks, and of course, let's go Mets, baby.